Good evening. How's everybody doing? It's great to be learning with you on a Monday night. And we've got a key DAF. This is a wonderful page. All kinds of beautiful, valuable, and practical teachings on this page. It's a really colorful DAF. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Let's light up the darkness. And that song was Krasicha by Eitan Katz from his album Unplugged number 2. Welcome, Sharon in New Jersey, James in Indianapolis, Melissa in Great Neck, Stephen in New Hampshire, Nancy in North Carolina, Yehuda in South Carolina, Renee in Indiana, Bella in Florida, Paula in Chicago, John in Maine, Leona in Illinois, Karen in Northern California, Shandora in the Bronx, Pauline in Chicagoland, Rick in Chicagoland. Let me just ask a stupid question. Is Chicagoland like a colloquialism for Chicago? Or is there a place that is Chicagoland? I always read that, and I've been meaning to ask. Let me know. Erin says shalom. Clarice says good evening. Erev Tov. Aoife with us from Florida, and Lynn in North Texas. Also, Jesse in Virginia, and Aaron is in Modesto. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Okay. This is Daf Samech Gimel, page 63, here in Tractate Yevamos, the 14th volume of the Talmud. These are the laws of Yibum, levirate marriage, and as we've seen, there's a lot to say about marriage in the laws of levirate marriage. We had already some lessons about intercourse and how that affects levirate marriage. But from that, we got into some more general laws of marriage itself. And that's going to continue today in very interesting fashion. And we'll be completing our discussion with the Gemaras of Mishna number 7 here in chapter 6 of Tractate Yevamos. I think I must be coming to the end of this volume because Yevamos is a 2-volume tractate. So in my edition, it ends on page 70. Okay, and we're on page 63. But there's, I think, 120 or 115, something like that, 120 some odd pages here in Tractate Yevamos. All right, we picked this up at the bottom of 62b. Our Mishnah number 7 that we are continuing is the definition of, well, why do people get married? On the one hand, so they can be fruitful and multiply. And a man is obligated in that mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, according to Beis Shammai. He hasn't fulfilled it until he has 2 boys. According to Beis Hillel, a man hasn't fulfilled that obligation until he has fathered a boy and a girl. But then it says, so if he's not having kids, he doesn't have to be married. And then the Mishnah, the Gemara has already taught about this. No, it is good for a man to be married. A man should be married, and we'll be learning more about that today, right? Even if he can't have children, he should be married. All right, we pick this up at the bottom of 62b. The very bottom, the sages taught, one who loves his wife as he loves himself, and who honors her more than himself, and who instructs his sons and daughters in an upright path, and who marries them off near the time when they reach maturity. And there's some debate about what that means, but basically they should be married young. So about this man, the verse states, and you shall know that your tent is in peace. What bigger blessing could a person have than to know that than to be at peace and know that it is correct for him to be at peace? To review that again, one who loves his wife more than himself. One who loves his wife the way he loves himself, and who honors her even more than he honors himself, who instructs his sons and daughters in an upright path, who marries them off when they're young. About him it states, the verse states, and you shall know that your tent is in peace. As a result of his actions, there will be peace in his home, as it will be devoid of quarrel and sin. Gemara continues, one who loves his neighbors and who draws his relatives close and who marries the daughter of his sister, his niece from his sister. Why? Now remember, this is permitted according to Torah law, but we don't do it anymore according to rabbinic law. But one who marries his niece from his sister. So this is a woman that he knows and is fond of as a family relative and not only as a wife. And so one who does these things, loves his neighbors, draws his relatives close, marries his niece from his sister, one who lends a sela, a coin, to a pauper at his time of need. About him, the verse states, then you shall call and the Lord will answer. You shall cry and he will say, here I am. Right? So if we extract the principle, right, loving your neighbors, drawing your relatives close, marrying a niece, but really, right, like marrying someone that you're going to be fond of, right? That you're gonna feel about your spouse the way you would feel warmly about your relatives. That you're there for a pauper in his time of need. About this man, the verse states, then you shall call and the Lord will answer. You shall cry and the Lord will say, here I am. Now, the Gemara provides now we're on 63a. The Gemara provides a mnemonic device for a series of statements that are cited in the name of Rabbi Elazar. In Hebrew, this would make more sense, but then it's not going to make sense to us. So I'm just going to read these introductory words, which serve as reminders. If you were speaking Hebrew, it would make more sense. But nonetheless, woman and land, helper, this, too, the blessings, merchants, lowly. Right? So these are sort of like just mnemonic clues, reminders to understand these teachings that are now the teachings which are now going to follow from Rabbi Elazar. Now the Gemara presents these statements. Rabbi Elazar said, any man who does not have a wife is not a man. This is all Rabbi Elazar's advice. Any man who does not have a wife is not a man. As it is stated, male and female, he created them and called their name Adam. Genesis 5:2. And Rabbi Elazar said, any man who does not have his own land is not a man. As it is stated, the heavens are the heavens of the Lord, but the earth he has given to the children of men. Psalm 115. And Rabbi Elazar said, what is the meaning of that which is written? I will make a helpmate for him. Now, this word helpmate, that's how it's usually translated. When it talks about God creating Eve for Adam, it refers to her as an ezer kenegdo. And literally that means a helper opposite him. What does that mean? I will make a helpmate for him, kenegdo, ezer kenegdo. Helper is ezer, opposite kenegdo. So what does this mean? If one is worthy, his wife helps him. If he is not worthy, she is against him. And some say a slightly different version. Rabbi Elazar raised a contradiction. It is written in the Torah with a spelling that allows it to be read, striking him, kenagdo, and we read it as though it said, for him, kenegdo. If he is worthy, she is for him as his helpmate. If he is not worthy, she strikes him. The Gemara relates that Rabbi Yosei encountered Elijah the prophet and said to him, it is written, I will make him a helpmate. In what manner does a woman help a man? And Elijah the prophet said to Rabbi Yosei, when a man brings wheat from the field, does he chew raw wheat? When he brings home flax, does he wear unprocessed flax? His wife turns the raw products into bread and clothing. Is his wife not found to be the one who lights up his eyes and stands him on his feet? And Rabbi Elazar said, what is the meaning of that which is written? This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, Genesis 2:23. And this teaches, now this is one of those teachings that is hyperbolic and even according to the classic commentary, metaphoric. right? So this teaches that Adam, the first man, had intercourse with each animal and beast in his search for his mate, and his mind was not at ease in accordance with the verse, and for Adam there was not found a helpmate for him until he had intercourse with his wife, with Eve. In other words, until he had intercourse with Eve, who in Hebrew is Chava. So Maharsha, a classic commentator on the Talmud, teaches, what does this mean? It means that, remember, Adam was the first man and all these animals were the first animals, and this was the first encounter. So he just examined every animal and said, is this animal a mate for me? Is this animal a mate for me? And of course he found that these animals were not appropriate to be a mate for him until God created Chava for him, and then man and woman were together. And Rabbi Elazar said, what is the meaning of that which is written? And by the way, there was a little discussion, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, I think, about Lilith, right? Who was Lilith? Maybe it was yesterday. And Lilith, very interesting. So I did a little bit of reading about Lilith. And Tzvi Freeman, in an article that I shared a link to it in, I guess, yesterday's class, you can find it in the comments, explains that Lilith was woman 1.0 and Chava, in English Eve, was woman 2.0, right? So because there are two, and that's arising from the fact that in the Torah, it's like there are two creation stories. First, it says that God created man and woman together at the same time. And then later it says that God created woman, out of Adam's side. So there's like two creation stories for woman. And the idea is that there was a woman 1.0, and that was Lilith. And then she's gone from the world, but her spirit remains. And then there was woman 2.0, the upgraded version, who was much less, was more easygoing and forgiving. Like Lilith is somebody who comes from the world of Tohu, the original world of creation, where humans don't participate. They don't partner with God. God created everything, God's self, right? But then once humans were in the world, then there's more of this partnership. Now, what's interesting is that woman got upgraded, right? From Lilith to Eve, there was 1.0 and 2.0, not Adam. Right? So now when you say that women are holier than men and women are more spiritual, are loftier, are in fact more evolved than men are, here's your source for that, right? Men are still that original version, and we're still trying to build ourselves into a 2.0. Women naturally occupy a loftier plane. So Rabbi Elazar said, what is the meaning of that which is written? And in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Nivrechu. This was a statement of God to Abraham, right? So after the Akedas Yitzhak, after the binding of Isaac, where Abraham was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, God said, because you have done this thing, you've passed the test, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed by you, or shall bless themselves by you. So what does this mean, actually, practically? So the Holy One, blessed be He, said to Abraham, I have two good shoots to graft, levarech, onto you. Ruth, the Moabite, right, who is the ancestor of King David, who is the ancestor of the Messiah, and Naamah, the Ammonite, whose marriage with Solomon led to the ensuing dynasty of the kings of Judea. All the families of the earth means even families that live in the earth, i.e. who have land of their own, are blessed only due to the Jewish people. And similarly, when the verse states, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him, Genesis 18:18, it indicates that even ships that come from Gallia to Hispania are blessed only due to the Jewish people. Now, obviously, in the Talmud, you're going to find, sort of Jewish exceptionalism and this idea that the Jews are the center of the world, based on the fact that the Torah was given to the Jewish people. Interestingly, on Shabbos, our Rav, Yekusiel Kalmanson, taught, that there's a familiar teaching it's a midrash that before God gave, and it's in the Talmud as well, that before God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, he offered it to all the other peoples of the world. And when they heard a little bit about what was in it and how many restrictions there would be on our desires, as it were, they turned him down. And the Jewish people were the ones who said, okay, we'll take it, But because it was first offered to all the people of the world, there is always a bond, a connection between all the people of the world and Torah. So it's a very interesting teaching that emerges from that midrash. So since the world is a place where Jews have the opportunity, and it's an opportunity because we're so far from perfecting this opportunity, from really seizing it. Jews have the opportunity to fulfill all the obligations of the Torah in this world. And if all the Jews would get on board with that, then the Messiah would come. We learn elsewhere, and we would enter the Messianic age already. Tragically, at least 90% of the Jewish people are not fulfilling their obligations according to Torah. And actually, that causes problems in the world, not only for the Jews, but for the whole world. And we're going to learn that today. And Rabbi Elazar said, all craftsmen are destined to stand up and work the land, as it is stated, and all that handle the oar, the mariners, and all the pilots of the sea shall come down from their ships, they shall stand upon the land. Ezekiel 27:29. And Rabbi Elazar said, there is no occupation lowlier than working the land, as it is stated, and they shall come down, implying that one who works the land is of a lower stature even than a sailor, which is considered a very, very difficult and dangerous job in ancient times. But somehow that being a farmer is even more difficult. And the Gemara similarly states, Rabbi Elazar saw land that was plowed across its width, and he said to the land, even if they plow you once more lengthwise for further improvement, conducting business is better than farming with you, as the potential profits gained by selling merchandise are far greater than those from working the land. And the Gemara relates a similar incident. Rav entered between the sheaves in a field and saw them waving in the wind. And he said to the sheaves, if you want to wave, go ahead and wave. But conducting business is better than farming with you. And Rava similarly said, one who has 100 dinars that are invested in a business is able to eat meat and wine every day, whereas he who has 100 dinars worth of land eats only salt and vegetables. And what is more, working the land causes him to lie on the ground at night in order to guard the land at harvest time, and it draws quarrels upon him with other people. It's just very, very difficult to be a farmer landowner. Rav Papa said, sow your own produce and do not buy it. So this would seem to be an opposing opinion, that it is better to own your own land and to grow your food. Even though they are equal to each other in value, these that you sow yourself will be blessed. Conversely, even according to Rav Papa, buy your clothes rather than weave them yourself. But the Gemara comments, this applies only to mats that you sleep on. But with regard to the cloak that one wears, perhaps he will not find it precisely to his liking, and therefore he should make his own cloak, which fits his measurements precisely. Rav Papa further advised, if there is a hole in your house, close it up, and do not enlarge it and then plaster it, or at least plaster it and do not knock it down and build again. And here is a classic Talmudic saying and a classic Talmudic piece of wisdom that anyone who's renovated a home will identify with. As Rav Papa says, whoever engages in construction becomes poor. Hurry to buy land so that you do not lose the opportunity. Be patient and marry a woman who is suitable for you. Descend a level to marry a woman who's the right woman for you, even if she's of lower social status, but ascend a level to choose a friend. Rabbi Elazar Bar Avina said, calamity befalls the world only due to the sins of the Jewish people. As it is stated, I have cut off nations, their corners are desolate, I have made their streets waste. And it is written, I said, surely you will fear me, you will receive correction. Both are from Zephaniah chapter 3, verses 6 and 7. And this indicates that other nations were punished so that the Jewish people would mend their ways. What can I say? If indeed the world is a place that provides an opportunity for the Jewish people to live up to the obligations of Torah, and they don't, and they bring suffering into the world, well, then maybe there's a good reason why, you can sometimes observe in America, for example, that people of other faiths like their Jews Jewy. Just leave it at that. The Gemara cites more statements with regard to wives. When Rav was taking leave of his uncle and teacher, Rabbi Chiya, upon his return from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, Rabbi Chiya said to him, may the merciful one save you from something that is worse than death. And Rav was perplexed. Is there anything that is worse than death? He went and examined the sources, and he found the following verse spoken by King Solomon in Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verse 26. Said Solomon, and I find more bitter than death the woman, etc. And Rabbi Chiya was hinting at this verse, and indeed, Rav's wife would constantly aggravate him. When he would say to her, prepare me lentils, she would prepare him peas. If he asked her for peas, she would prepare him lentils, right? There was no peace in his home. And somebody who has strife between husband and wife in their home, it would almost be better to be dead. I mean, it's metaphoric. It wouldn't actually be better to be dead, but it's an extreme source of discomfort and an absolute, erasure of peace if there's constant strife in the home. With this big, case going on in the news these days between former husband and wife celebrities, you could see how bad it was when there was constant strife in the home. When Chiya, his son, grew up, he would reverse the requests that Rav asked him to convey to her. In other words, it got so bad between Rav and his wife that instead of talking her directly when he needed something from his wife, he would send his son with the message. But what was Chiya, the son, doing? He would say the opposite, right? His father would ask for lentils, so he would say to his mother, Dad asked for peas. Then the wife would make lentils because she was so angry with Rav all the time, and then Rav would get what he asked for. So Rav said to his son Chiya, your mother has improved now that you convey my requests. And Chiya was honest, and he said to his father Rav, it is I who reverse your request to her. Rav said to him, well, this is an example of the well-known adage that people say, he who comes from you shall teach you wisdom. You shall learn wisdom from your children. I should have thought of that idea myself. However, you, my son Chiya, should not do this. Why? As it is stated, they have taught their tongue to speak lies, they weary themselves to commit iniquity, etc. If you attribute such a request to me, you will have uttered a falsehood, and I don't want you to become accustomed to speaking falsehood. And the Gemara relates a similar story. Rabbi Chiya's wife would constantly aggravate him. Nevertheless, when he would find something that she would appreciate, he would wrap it up in his shawl and bring it to her. And Rav said to him, doesn't she constantly aggravate you? Why do you bring her things? And Rabbi Chiya said to him, it is enough for us that our wives raise our children and save us from sin, right? Because we're married, our eyes aren't looking around for some other woman. And we should therefore show gratitude to them. And the Gemara cites a related incident. Rav Yehuda was teaching Torah to Rav Yitzhak, his son, and they encountered the verse, and I find more bitter than death the woman. And his son said to him, Isha, right? So it's translated as the woman or the wife. And his son said to him, for example, whom? And his father replied, for example, your mother. He said, more bitter than death is the constant strife in my home. And the Gemara asks, didn't Rav Yehuda teach Rav Yitzchak, his son, the following Baraisa? A man finds peace of mind only with his first wife. As it is stated, let your fountain be blessed and have joy from the wife of your youth. Proverbs 5:18. And his son said to him, for example, whom? And his father responded to his case as well, for example, your mother. So if he said, who will you find peace with? Your mother. And who is brings so much strife into the home that it's worse than death? And his father said, your mother. So how could the same answer apply to these verses, which are so opposite in meaning? This indicates that Rav Yehuda did find peace of mind with his wife. And the Gemara answers, she was aggressive and forceful, but she was easily appeased, right? So there were times that it was so difficult for Rav Yehuda to have any kind of peace in his home because his wife was aggressive and forceful, but she had the additional quality that she wouldn't stay in that mood all the time, or not even for an extended amount of time. She could be aggressive and forceful, but she was also easily appeased. And the Gemara asks, and we're on 63b, by the way. The Gemara asks, what are the circumstances when a woman is considered a bad wife? And Abaye said, she arranges a table for him and arranges her mouth for him at the same time. In other words, although she prepares food for him, she verbally abuses him while he eats. And Rava said, she arranges a table for him and then turns her back to him, displaying her lack of interest in his company. And Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina said, once a man marries a woman, his iniquities crumble, mitpakeken. As it is stated, whoever finds a wife finds good and obtains veyafek, favor of the Lord. Proverbs 18:22. Now in the West, in Eretz Yisrael, when a man married a woman, they would say to him as follows, matzah or moitze. In other words, they would ask the groom if the appropriate passage for his wife is that verse which begins with the word matzah, as it is written, whoever finds, not matzah the kind of bread, but it's a different verb, whoever finds matzah, whoever finds, it's the word find, whoever finds a wife finds good. Or whether it was a more appropriate verse for the wife that you happen to have married is the one beginning with the word moitze. As it is written in Ecclesiastics, and I find more bitter than death the woman, right? Did you find good when you married, or did you find something worse than death? So Rava said, it is a mitzvah to divorce a bad wife. As it is written, cast out the scorner, and contention will depart. Strife and shame will cease. Proverbs 22:10. And Rava said, a bad wife whose marriage contract settlement is too large for her husband to pay in the event of a divorce, her rival wife is at her side. In other words, the only way for him to improve matters is to take another wife. He can't afford to divorce her. He should have a second wife that will bring him peace. As people say in the well-known adage, the way to trouble a woman is with her peer and not with a thorn. In other words, if you take a second wife who brings peace into the home, and you show that you appreciate that, then even your first wife will change her ways so that she can compete. And Rava said, obviously we don't do this in modern times. For 1,000 years, it's been prohibited to have more than one wife. But 2,000 years ago, that was a piece of wisdom. And Rava said, a bad wife is as troublesome as a day of heavy rain. As it is stated, Proverbs 27:15, a continual dropping on a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. And Rava said, come and see how good a good wife is and how bad a bad wife is. How good is a good wife? As it is written, whoever finds a wife finds good. If the verse speaks of her, a wife, this demonstrates how good a good wife is, as the Bible itself praises her. If the verse speaks metaphorically of the Torah, right, in Proverbs, it's actually talking about the Torah, it is nevertheless indicates how good a good wife is, as she is compared to the Torah itself. And conversely, how bad is a bad wife? as it is written, and I find more bitter than death the woman. So if the verse speaks of her, this demonstrates how bad a bad wife is, as the Bible condemns her. And if the verse speaks metaphorically of Gehenna, right, the place where we go to have our to be purified of our sins before we ascend to heaven. So if the verse speaks metaphorically of Gehenna, it still demonstrates how bad a bad wife is, as Gehenna is compared to her. And the Gemara cites further statements on the same issue. A verse in Jeremiah 11:11 states, "Behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape." And Rav Nachman said that Rabba bar Avu said, "This is a bad wife, whose marriage contract is too large to divorce her." And similarly, with regard to the verse in Lamentations 1:14, "The Lord has given me into the hands of those against whom I cannot stand." And Rav Chisda said that Mar Ukva bar Chia said, "This is a bad wife whose marriage contract is too large to divorce her." And in the West, in Eretz Yisrael, they said this verse is referring to one whose food is dependent on his money. He is forced to purchase his food with cash as he does not possess land of his own. With regard to the verse, Deuteronomy 28:32, "Your sons and your daughters shall be given to another people." Rav Hanan bar Rava said that Rav said, this is a reference to the children's father's wife, i.e. their stepmother. And with regard to the verse, "I will provoke them with a vile nation," Rav Hanan bar Rava said that Rav said, this is a bad wife whose marriage contract is large. And Rabbi Eliezer said that these are apostates. And so too the verse states, "The vile man has said in his heart, there is no God. They have dealt corruptly," which proves that an apostate is referred to by this word vile. It was taught in a Baraisa with regard to the verse, "I will provoke them with a vile nation," that these are the inhabitants of Barbaria and the inhabitants of Martinai, who walk naked in the marketplace, as none is more despised and abominable before the omnipresent, before the Almighty, than one who walks naked in the marketplace. So according to the Talmud, God does not like streakers, nudist colonies, etc., but even worse, somebody who's walking naked in the marketplace, meaning just walking through town as if it's okay to walk around naked. And Rabbi Yochanan said, these are the Khabarim, a sect of Persian priests. And the Gemara relates, when they said to Rabbi Yochanan, the Khabarim have come to Babylonia, he shuddered and fell off his chair out of concern for the Jews living there. And they said to him, there is a way to deal with their persecution, as these Khabarim accept bribes. Upon hearing that not all was lost, he straightened himself and sat in his place once again. Apropos this group, the Khabarim, these Persian priests, the Gemara cites the following statement of the sages. The Khabarim were able to issue decrees against the Jewish people with regard to three matters, due to three transgressions on the part of the Jewish people. They decreed against meat, i.e., they banned ritual slaughter, right? They banned shechting, and the only way for Jews to eat kosher meat is that it's slaughtered in a kosher manner by a kosher butcher, and these Khabarim banned kosher slaughter. Why were they able to do that? Due to the failure of the Jewish people to give their own priests, the Kohanim, the gifts of the foreleg, the jaw, and the maw, which are set aside for the Kohanim. And they decreed against Jews bathing in bathhouses due to their neglect of ritual immersion, because the Jews were not living up to their obligations in Torah, right? Back then, just like now, there were always many Jews who weren't living a Torah life. And so because Jews who had become impure were not following the laws of immersing in a mikvah in order to purify themselves before entering the temple, they ended up having this decree against them, from outsiders, that they could not use the bathhouses. And third, the Khabarim were able to decree against the Jews the Khabarim exhumed the dead from their graves. Why? Because the Jews rejoice on the holidays of the Gentiles, right? Jews should not be observing Christmas, right? Jews should not be observing Diwali. Jews should not be observing the holidays of non-Jews. As it is stated, then shall the hand of the Lord be against you and against your fathers. 1 Samuel 12:15. Rabbi Bar Shmuel said this verse is referring to exhuming the dead, which upsets both the living and the dead. As the master said, due to the iniquity of the living, the dead are exhumed. Rava said to Rabbi Bar Mari, it is written, they shall not be gathered nor buried, they shall be for dung upon the face of the earth. Jeremiah 8:2. And it is written, and death shall be chosen rather than life. Jeremiah 8:3. If death will be so indecent that their bodies will not even be buried, why would people choose death over life? And Rabbi Bar Mari said to him, the latter verse does not refer to the previously described state of affairs, but rather it means death is preferable for the wicked, as it is better that they not live in this world and sin, and consequently descend into Gehenna. Right? If people are just on such a bad, wicked course, where to being alive in this world only means that they're going to keep sinning and pile up sins, it would be better for them that they die now and not bring such a vast load of sins with them when they reach the next world, for which they'll have to be purified in Gehenna. Now, going back to the subject of women and wives. It is written in the book of Ben Sira. Now, the book of Ben Sira, very interesting. The book of Ben Sira, also called the Wisdom of Sira and Ecclesiasticus, was one of the first works composed after the closing of the biblical canon. It was just a little too late to be in the Bible. And it was written before the Hasmonean period by Shimon ben Yehoshua ben Sira, a resident of Jerusalem and a younger contemporary of Shimon HaTzadik. The book was widely available and very popular, and the author's grandson, who lived in Alexandria, translated it into Greek, making it available to those who could not read the original Hebrew. In the Septuagint, and consequently that was the first Greek translation of the Bible, in many other translations, Ecclesiasticus is one of the books of the Bible, and the sages considered it apocryphal and even criticized those who read it, both because its counsel is uneven in value and due to the fact that people confused it with the alphabet of Sira, a book of folk wisdom of dubious worth. In any case, the sages quote the book of Ben Sira on many occasions and sometimes even treated it as one of the sacred writings. They certainly did not refrain from citing its good advice in their sermons or from making use of its wisdom. For centuries, the book was known only through translations, but recent discoveries on Masada, among other places, have unearthed large portions of the work in the original Hebrew. As it was not a sacred book, copyists apparently allowed themselves certain liberties, which accounts for the different versions of the text. Moreover, it seems that the sages of the Talmud were able to cite quotations from the book of Sira by memory. All right, so it is written in the book of Ben Sira, a good wife is a good gift for her husband. And it is written, a good one will be placed in the bosom of a God-fearing man. A bad wife is a plague to her husband. What is his remedy? He should divorce her, and he will be cured of his plague. A beautiful wife, happy is her husband. The number of his days are doubled. His pleasure in her beauty makes him feel as though he has lived twice as long. Turn your eyes from a graceful woman who is married to another man, lest you be caught in her trap. Do not turn to her husband to mix wine and strong drink with him, which can lead to temptation. For on account of the countenance of a beautiful woman, many have been destroyed, and her slain is a mighty For on account of the countenance of a beautiful woman, many have been destroyed, and on account of her, a mighty host was slain. Furthermore, many have been wounded peddlers. Many have been the wounded peddlers, and this is referring to men who travel from place to place to sell women's jewelry. Their frequent dealings with women lead their husbands to harm the peddlers. Those who accustom themselves to licentious matters are like a spark that ignites a coal. As a cage is full of birds, so are their houses full of deceit. The Gemara quotes additional statements from the book of Ben Sira. More statements. Do not suffer for tomorrow's trouble. Period. Full stop. Do not suffer from tomorrow's trouble. That has been stated in many different ways, in many different cultures, by many different wise people, and it is always true, right? If you're going to be suffering about something that might happen tomorrow, well, then you're suffering it twice. You'll suffer with it when it happens, and you're going to suffer with it today. And it's doubly foolish to suffer with it today because it might not even happen. Do not suffer from tomorrow's trouble. That is, do not worry about problems that might arise in the future, as you do not know what a day will bring. Perhaps when tomorrow comes, the individual who is so worried will not even be among the living. And this person was consequently upset over a world that is not his. Prevent a crowd from inside your house. I do not let many people enter your house, and do not even bring all of your friends into your house. Make sure, however, that a crowd seeks your welfare and that you have many allies. Reveal a secret to only 1 in 1,000, since 999 in 1,000 are unable to keep a secret. Very difficult to identify people who can actually keep a secret. Rabbi Asi said, the Messiah, Mashiach, the son of David, will not come until all the souls of the body have been finished, i.e. until all souls that are destined to inhabit physical bodies have done so. As it is stated, for the spirit that enwraps itself is from me and the souls that I have made, Isaiah 57:16. And it is taught in a baraisa that Rabbi Eliezer says, anyone who does not engage in the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply is considered as though he sheds blood. As it is stated, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. And it is written immediately afterward, and you be fruitful and multiply. Right? So this idea that when we fulfill the obligation to be fruitful and multiply, not only are we fulfilling an obligation that was given to us, a mitzvah that was given to us, but since the Messiah won't come until all the children destined to be born in this world have been born right before the coming of Mashiach, so every time you father a child, you're bringing Mashiach a little bit closer. So Rabbi Yaakov says, it is as though he diminishes the divine image. As it is stated, for in the image of God he made man, Genesis 9:6. And it is written immediately afterward, and you be fruitful and multiply, Genesis 9:7. Ben Azai says, it is as though he sheds blood and also diminishes the divine image, as it is stated, and you be fruitful and multiply, after the verse that alludes to both shedding blood and the divine image, right? So since be fruitful and multiply in Genesis 9 comes right after, for in the image of God he made man, and also talking about shedding blood, I guess that was a story of Cain and Abel. If you don't be fruitful and multiply, it's as if you didn't create a life that was destined to be created, and that's likened to shedding blood. They said to Ben Azai, right? So Ben Azai has just said how important it is and why it's important to be fruitful and multiply. So they said to Ben Azai, there is a type of scholar who expounds well and fulfills his own teachings well. And there's another type of scholar who fulfills well, but he does not expound well. But you, who have never married and are talking about how important it is to be fruitful and multiply, well, you expound well on the importance of procreation, but you do not fulfill well your own teachings. Right? You're talking about how important it is to be fruitful and multiply, but you've never married or had children. Ben Azai said to them, what shall I do? As my soul yearns for Torah, and I do not wish to deal with anything else. It is possible for the world to be maintained by others who engaged in the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. So it seems like there's an out, at least according to Ben Azai, for being exempt from be fruitful and multiply, but only because he's so busy with a different mitzvah all the time. He was studying Torah day and night all the time, either studying or learning or teaching. And it is similarly taught, I'm almost done, by the way, so if you got questions or comments, please get them in. And it is similarly taught in another baraisa that Rabbi Eliezer says, anyone who does not engage in the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply is considered as though he sheds blood. As it is stated, whoever sheds the blood of man, and it is stated near it, and you be fruitful and multiply. And by the way, obviously a person, and there are many people in the world who are just unable to have children, right? In many cases because they were born that way, or they had a disease or an accident, or somehow they were rendered unable to be fruitful and multiply. So they're unable, they're exempt from the mitzvah because it is impossible for them to fulfill it. And while it would be painful for such people to hear these teachings, they should take comfort in the fact that there are other ways for them to be fruitful, and that they haven't done anything wrong because, if they're just unable to be fruitful and multiply. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, it is as though he diminishes the divine image. Ben Azai says, it is as though he sheds blood and diminishes the divine image. They said to Ben Azai, there's a type of scholar who expounds well, etc. You're talking about how important it is to procreate, but you're not doing it. The sages taught with regard to the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. And when it rested, he would say, return, Lord, to the 10,000s of the thousands of Israel. That's in the book of Numbers 10:36, which we actually say at the end of the Torah service on Mondays, Thursdays, and on Shabbos. And this teaches that the divine presence does not rest upon less than 2,000s and 10,000s of the Jewish people, as the terms thousands and 10,000s are both in the plural. Consequently, if there were 2,000s and 10,000s of the Jewish people, right? If there were 2,000 and 20,000, less one, and this man did not engage in the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, is he not found to have caused a divine presence to depart from the Jewish people? Abba Hanan said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, a man who does not engage in procreation is liable to death, as it is stated with regard to the sons of Aaron, and Nadav and Avihu died, and they had no children. And this indicates that if they would have had children, they would not have died. Others say he causes the divine presence to depart from the Jewish people, as it is stated, to be a God to you and your seed after you. When your seed is after you, i.e. when you have children, the divine presence rests upon the Jewish people. But if your seed is not after you, upon whom can the divine presence rest? Upon wood and stones? And it ends with that question. That's on 64a, and tomorrow we'll pick that up with Mishnah number 8 here in chapter 6. So let's see if we have questions or comments. On Yevamos 63. Bob Nemtusak said, so farmers are bums. I don't understand. Yeah, I don't think he was saying that. I think they were saying it wasn't really about stature. And as you saw, there was even a conflicting opinion there that it is good to grow your own food and you'll have tremendous, sort of pride of ownership, and it'll taste better if you grow your own food. But I think what they were saying is it's a very difficult way to make a living. And really, I think what they were saying is often the sages are talking to each other. Sometimes they're talking to the rest of the Jewish people, and sometimes they're talking to each other. Meaning, much better for a Torah scholar to have some kind of a business where working just a few hours a day, he can provide income and spend the rest of his day studying Torah. Whereas a farmer has to work so hard just to earn a living that there just won't be any time left over for Torah study. And that's why they're giving that advice. But we have many cases actually of sages who were also landowners, who were running a farm as a business, but had enough land and enough workers that they could just put in a few hours, more like the gentleman farmer, and have enough time free for Torah study. Lucy, all the families were blessed in Adam and Eve. Genesis, why do the sages think they are blessed through the Jews? Because Adam and Eve are before the Jews existed, are they not? I think they were talking about all the families are blessed in Abraham, right? So maybe your comment came in before that. And that, I think that, I don't know that it said all the families of the earth. I mean, all the families of the earth are blessed through Adam and Eve in that there are people in the world because of Adam and Eve. But I think the statement, all the families of the world will bless themselves by you, was about Abraham. Rick, can our prayers assist souls in Gehenna? What a great question. I think yes, right? I think yes. I think our prayers are system, and particularly our actions, meaning that when we do mitzvahs in this world, in the name of, or in the memory of, in honor of people who've left this world, like we don't know, we just assume, that people who have left this world go straight to heaven. We do, because we're not going to cast aspersions. We don't know, what the transgressions that might have piled up for a person that they need to be purified from. About ourselves, we should assume that, we need as many mitzvahs as we can acquire, because we all know that, talking about myself, I've committed many transgressions in my life. I hope that I have enough mitzvahs to outweigh them so I can, just go straight to the world to come. But it may well be that I'm going to have to spend some time in Gehenna. But when people in this world study Torah, or give to charity, or visit the sick, or create a hospital, or donate to education, anytime we perform mitzvahs in this world in the name of somebody who has left this world already, it's the only way for them to accrue more mitzvahs after they've left this world. Once you leave this world, you can't do any more mitzvahs. It's only in this world that you can perform mitzvahs. But if we in this world perform mitzvahs in their name, they do get a credit and a merit for that in the world to come. So if they're in Gehenna, I assume that means they're going to leave Gehenna sooner. And if they're already in Shemayim, right, in the world of souls, then, which has an infinite number of gradations, they will, go up even higher in that world, come a little bit closer to the heavenly throne. Eugenia, as a woman, finds this very informative, though haven't sought out evil, appreciate the warning. I'm not sure what that was specifically in reference to. But I think that a lot of these teachings, it's definitely a patriarchal system. And they were talking about, the pain or the reward of finding, a good wife or a bad wife. But that kind of wisdom and teaching applies equally to women who are seeking husbands, right? I mean, likewise for any woman, right? If she finds a good husband, her life is going to be so much better than if she ends up choosing the wrong guy and finds herself married to a bad husband. So all these teachings work both ways. It's just that the sages, we're speaking in the company of men, and so often worded their teachings that way. But for sure, I think these are parallel teachings that both men and women can learn from as they are in the world seeking a mate, or in a marriage and seeking peace. All right, that seems to be all the questions that Nina passed over to me. And I mean, wasn't this an amazing, colorful, in some ways, ancient, and in other ways, so relevant, so of our time, so much to learn from here. I think one of the lessons that is really a takeaway, is that no matter how many complaints we have about our spouse, right, we should be like Rabbi Chia, right? That even though his spouse would often aggravate him, whenever he would find something that she would like, he would wrap it in his shawl and bring it to her. And I don't think that only means that he brought her flowers or he brought her, little gifts. It means that you should, be attentive to your spouse. And rather than be that person who's compiling evidence of everything they've done wrong and how they've wronged you and how they wronged you this morning and how they wronged you yesterday and how they're probably going to wrong you tonight, look for the good. Look for the good. Don't meet your spouse halfway. Go 90% of the way there to create peace in the home. There's nothing more important than shalom bayis, than peace in the home. And may we all, remember that lesson and live it. Have a great night. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow on page 64 for Mishnah number 8.